How's it going, everybody? Uh, Wanted to do a quick video on what I've learned so far about suspension geometry and just kind of a basic rule of thumb, maybe. I'm not going to like super get into it. I'm still learning, so I don't want to tell anybody the wrong things. But I do want to go over some basic stuff that you can do to adjust your suspension geometry and your link geometry so that you can probably be able to do some of the things that you're wanting your truck to do without spending thousands and thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars. Nobody's spending thousands and thousands. People who are doing this for a living do that, but we're not. So this is my budget competition truck. This is a Endura carbon fiber chassis, basic kit from Amazon for the TRX4. And basically I'm just doing this truck on a budget so that, I have something more competition based, so that I have something that I can beat around on the rocks and achieve some pretty cool angles and stuff like that. So first things first, I want to go over roll angle. Roll angle is essentially how much your truck can flex, basically. Now, your shock tuning comes into play with that as well, but basically your roll angle is just how free your links are to flex as much as possible. Now, on a super competition truck, you really don't want too much flex. Like, you really don't want to be able to stand up the back axle and then have the other axle flat. That's way too much. And it can mess with your CG and things like that when you're side hilling. So, but a general rule of thumb, and this is how you can achieve this, is make a crude tool like this. This is just a piece of aluminum flat stock. I should have got something a little bit thinner, but cut to the same length, put a screw and a nut through the end of it, basically so that you can do a basic triangular eyeball guesstimate. So let's go over the rear links first. Now the bottom links, typically what you want is you want to be able to have your lower links pinched somewhere close to the center of the chassis. And what you want to do is basically find the wheelbase, find the center, and then find the center of the chassis. Put a little white dot or something. Mine is underneath this cable, right at the center of the chassis. And what you want to do is you want to put your pivot point right in the center of that, and you want to go out to your lower links, and you want your links to somewhat fall as close as you can to that line going to the center of the chassis. Okay. Now it's also the same thing for the front. The front, you want it to do the same thing. You want the lower links to pinpoint somewhere in the center of the chassis. It's a basic way of thinking of it. Not going into it like super crazy. Now the upper links are, I think, a little bit different. What you typically want to do in the back is you want to have the center point over the axle, and you want the front point of the links to be centered somewhere around the pivot point of the front axle. Okay. Now it's going to be the same thing for the front. The front, you want it to center over this axle, and you want it to be pointed somewhere towards the pivot points over the rear. Basic way of thinking of it. Somebody's going to come at me and say I'm doing it wrong, and I'd rather you do that. If I'm saying anything wrong, please go to the comments and correct me. I don't want to tell anyone the wrong thing. I want this to help people figure stuff out with their rigs. So that's a basic thing on how to adjust your link geometry for roll angle, and that's going to help your flex. That's it. That's all that's going to do. It's going to help your flex. It's not really going to do anything super crazy when you're going over rocks or coming down rocks. So how you would adjust things like that is your anti-squat and anti-dive. Okay? Anti-squat is basically, in a normal vehicle, whenever you accelerate, it's going to squat the rear and lift the front. Okay? Now, when you're going over a rock, or when you're trying to punch over a rock, you want it to do the opposite. When you punch, you want it to lift the rear and push down the front. That's going to help dig your front tires into the ground and grab traction and get up over it. Now, anti-dive is kind of the same thing, but towards going downhill or braking. So diving is whenever you decelerate or brake, it's going to dive the front. Okay? It's going to tuck the front and dig in. Now what that's going to do when you're coming down a hill is it's going to lift your back and normally flip you over. So what you want is when you're going downhill and braking, you want it to lift or at least keep the front steady. Okay? That's the most that you can hope for, is to keep it steady. Trying to achieve anti-squat and anti-dive on the same rig, especially a scale rig like this, is going to be near impossible. But there is things that you can do to adjust to try to get it closer to that as much as you can. Now on this rig, you can see there's no real adjustment for my front links, so I have no hope of adjusting the anti-dive on the front. But because there's plenty of space up here, I can try to adjust the anti-squat. So essentially what you want, again, this is just crude, basic kind of geometry stuff. I'm not going to go super into it. But what you want is your rear links to do something like this, okay? You don't want them to be down here. You want them to be something like that, where they naturally kind of pinch or come together somewhere above the front axle. The farther forward and the more up you can get them, the better. So things like link risers in the back, they kind of help, whereas, you know, you can't change the link position, but you can raise the front a little bit, and that just kind of helps, or raise the top, sorry, and that just kind of helps change the point where they intersect to a different position. But what it's going to do is bring it farther back when you put a link riser in the back. So like I said, what you want is, shoot, bumped the camera, I apologize, but what you want is your rear links, upper and lower, to pinpoint somewhere above the front axle, and typically you want it to be above the CG point. And for the anti-dive on the front, it's kind of the same thing, where you want it to pinch or naturally come together above the rear axle and hopefully above the CG point towards the back. Pretty simple way of thinking about it. You can make a crude tool like this to help you figure out where you're at. And as far as adjustments, you can get onto eBay or Amazon and buy you a set of these aluminum spacers. I think I got this set for like 20 bucks. Comes with a bunch of different sizes, and what that's going to be able to do, and also you'll have to have a bunch of different length screws. So like on the back here on the bottom, you can see I added I think that's a 6mm spacer to try to pinch the lower front links, or the lower bottom links. What am I trying to say? The front of the lower rear links, trying to pinch them together to get that roll angle closer to the center of the chassis. And now I can't do it that much on this chassis because the TRX4 transmission is quite large, and you can see I'm already digging into it a little bit. But get you some spacers, get you a couple different length screws, and make you a crude tool like this. Try to choose something a little bit thinner than I did, because it's kind of hard to see where your links are with these fat pieces of aluminum. But this is a very easy way of getting you in the ballpark of where you should be at. And there's plenty of videos out there where people go like super deep into it. They'll go into like specific degree angles and getting out protractors and stuff like that. But if you're trying to do this on a budget, this is probably the easiest way I've found to adjust things correctly, or at least as close as you can. Now, on a basic RTR rig, there's not really a whole lot of things that you can do. If you have floor pan space, you might be able to do something like what I've done before, is add this is a lay down servo mount. Now what I've done in the past is I've taken these, screwed them onto my floor pan, and I would raise the rear upper links. And let me grab a truck where I've done that. So this is my Element Night Runner, and you can see I've added those servo links or servo mounts to raise the front part of the upper rear links, and that's going to help with my anti-squat. So that's an easy way of doing it. You can also do link risers, like I said. They work pretty good at adjusting the anti-squat level, but really typically what you want is you want to focus on the chassis mounted spots. You really want to raise those both up and angle them correctly. So you want to raise them up and angle them correctly so that the point where they cross is somewhere above the front axle and hopefully above your CG point. That's typically what you want. If you can achieve anti-squat, it would make a world of difference. Trust me. Roll angle should be pretty easy on a rig like this. You can just add spacers and longer screws. Now on an RTR rig, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to adjust your roll angle on stuff. The only thing that you can really hope to do is maybe adjust the points on the axle by moving the link positions to maybe the outside of where they mount. And I'll show you what I mean by that here. So this is a Red Cat Everest that I got. Now this is, you can obviously tell, is hopeless with its roll angle. And if you can't adjust anything like this, where the chassis, you know, the links mount on the outside of the chassis, what you can do is move the pivot points on the axle out. Okay, that can help a little bit. So I hope that helps. If you have a chassis similar to this, where you really can't pinch these links in more, you can try to widen it out on the axle as long as you can clear your steering on the front by doing the same thing, putting those spacers in here and a little bit longer screws and trying to widen it out on the back, on the axles, I mean. So that's something that you can do there. I don't really have another truck that I can show you. Well, I guess I do. So this is a TRX4 chassis, just a basic TRX4 chassis. And as you can see, there's really no way to adjust anything on the skid plate side to adjust your roll angle. But like I said, there is ways that you can adjust on the axle. You know, you can move your link positions to the outside of these knuckles, add a spacer between, and get a really long screw so that you can widen the back of it out on the axle. And then you can get a link riser if you want. And that can help a lot on an RTR rig like this. And, you know, like the front, hopeless. Really nothing that I can do on the front of this because the lower links are almost straight, and I can't really widen it out anymore because if I widen it out, add my shock, it's going to dig into the knuckle when I turn. So, like I said, adjusting the front is going to be a lot harder than adjusting the rear. There are some things that you can do to help with the rear. And, you know, it's just kind of one of those things where you play around with it. As long as you don't do anything that kind of like permanently changes your chassis, you know, it can help out a lot. So I hope this helps y'all. If I said something wrong, please correct me in the comments. I don't want to say the wrong things to somebody. But as far as I can understand, this is a basic way of getting your link geometry correct. I'm not going to go over shock positions and things like that. Shock tuning can be another video. But hopefully this helps y'all. If you have one of these cheap carbon fiber rigs or even an expensive carbon fiber rig, this is kind of the basic rule of thumb that you would need to go by. And yeah, I hope this helps. Like I said in the comments, if I said something correctly, please, or incorrectly, please correct me, because I'm still learning. I'm just trying to share with everyone what I've learned so far. Good luck adjusting your stuff. These spacer kits online are pretty cheap. You can get a cheap set of M3 screws at different lengths from places. Like I got these from a hobby store. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and happy crawling.